Are you a runner? Or more importantly, do you want to become one? Do you want to know where to begin or how to get better? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Run Amazing Utah, where runners of Utah share their inspirational stories of how they conquered their battles, reached their goals, and overcame the seemingly impossible. If they can do it, so can you.
What if you could? I mean, reach that big dream that you've always dreamt about. Maybe you think it's impossible. Maybe others have told you it's impossible. Maybe it's your body that's holding you back. Maybe you feel like you've aged or it will never be well enough to do what you want it to do. Well, guess what? That's not true. At Body Smart, we empower you and teach you how to make changes toward the kind of life you want to live and give you the tools you need to reach that goal you've always wanted to reach. From running your first mile to qualifying for Boston, we have everything you need to reach that dream. Call us at 801-479-4471 or contact us through our website, bodysmartutah.com. We can help you maximize your performance and stay on the road. Let us help you reach that dream.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Run Amazing Utah podcast. We are so excited to have Preston Wood here with us today. So another great guest to share a little bit more about his running journey and running experience. And so glad to have you with us today. You run mostly ultras, but other distances as well and stuff like that. We always like to dive into people's running journey and kind of their life journey, but you started out as a football player first, right? Before you ever really got into running.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into running actually, before we get into that, tell us some of your running accomplishments, what you've done and like who you are as a runner.
Yeah, as a runner, I'm mostly an ultra runner, like you said.
Yeah.
I really just like getting after it all day in the mountains. I've run several 100-milers and 50-milers.
Nice.
I just like running ultras right now.
Yeah.
I've run 8 or 9 like road marathons as well. That's what got me into ultra running. That's where I started, and just kind of progressed from there.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a total number of
Of what?
Of ultras and things like that?
I would guess probably like 20-ish ultras.
Wow.
And, anywhere from a 50K to 100 miles. I think I've finished 400 milers, 4 or 5, and 4 or 5 50-milers.
So that's awesome. So a couple a year then, couple bigger races a year, at least 100-miler
each of the last 4 years.
Wow.
And that's a streak that I'd like to probably keep going, just run at least 100 a year.
Yeah.
This year, going to try to do a couple. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Two this year if you can. Huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
And you stayed pretty healthy throughout.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I stayed pretty injury-free. I don't know if it's my background with a lot of weight training or what it was growing up, but I never really got injured playing team sports either.
Yeah.
It's just never really been something I've dealt with, so I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, because that's one of the things you always hear, like when people criticize running or give their excuse for why they don't run. It's like, oh, I don't want to get injured.
And everybody says, oh, you wear out your knees. Well, I don't really have bad knees. Yeah. I think that's a genetic thing a lot of times.
Yeah, well, and science would suggest that that's more of a sedentary problem and not an active problem, right? So, okay. So let's go back then to the beginning, or to the backstory behind it.
Yeah, so I just grew up playing a lot of team sports, played a lot of basketball early. I was really tall. I'm 6 feet tall now. I was 6 feet tall in like 6th grade, 6th or 7th grade. And so I was really tall, pretty thin, athletic. I matured pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So played a lot of basketball and football and baseball and soccer and just everything that I could. I just liked playing.
Yeah.
And then eventually settled into football because I wasn't getting any taller.
Yeah.
And I had the skills of a center at 6 feet tall.
Nice.
And that doesn't really, help in basketball. When
You're
6 feet tall, that's like
you're not going to play
size.
center at 6 feet tall in basketball.
And so I just kind of ended up playing football, and I wasn't overly fast. And so I was a bigger kid, so I played offensive line. Eventually, got pretty big. Like in high school, during football season, I'd probably weigh about 260 pounds. And then, I wrestled my senior year and I got to like 245. I still had to wrestle heavyweight. And then in college, I got up to 300 pounds. I just played 1 year of college football at Southern Utah. Yeah. And then went on a church mission and then came back and had lost a bunch of weight and then gained it back because I was going to try to play football again. Yeah. And that dream kind of ended when I realized I wasn't that good. And I met my wife. And to be a walk-on college athlete and to get married is kind of a tough deal.
That's rough.
Yeah, and so I wanted to be responsible. So I stopped playing football, and then I was 300 pounds and really for no reason. Yeah. And just decided that I needed to lose weight. We were actually watching The Biggest Loser, and I was like, oh, I'm as big as a lot of these. I was as heavy. My body composition was a little different, but I was still really heavy. And then I decided to just start running because I had run a little bit in the past, and like during wrestling and during sports, I had never like hated running. I always kind of liked it. I was always like not tired, like the other guys seemed to be. So just started running and lost weight, and it's just kind of been an up and down thing. And I would get injured often on the roads because I don't think I was training really intelligently. Sure. I would get injured probably just from running too hard all the time. Yeah. And then I transitioned to trail running like 5 years ago now, I guess, and ran my first 50 miler and then just have kind of stuck with this and really thrived in it and really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And so, as somebody that was, 300 pounds, what advice would you give to somebody that's sitting there? I mean, you were a fit 300 pounds, so it's a little different.
Yeah,
right?
it was different because I was exercising like 5 or 6 times a week, right? Like that seems mind-boggling to a lot of people probably that I was maintaining such a big weight while being really active. Right. But
it takes a lot of food.
Yeah, it does take a lot of food. And I think the biggest thing is to just stick with it. Like anything, right? I mean, statistically, dieting is hard, right? Yeah. I mean, it goes in waves, and for me, it wasn't just like a straight drop to like ultimate like fitness, right? Sure. It was steady. I would lose, when you're that heavy, it's easy to lose big increments. So I would lose 40 pounds, and then I would stop running for a couple months, and then I'd gain 10 pounds back, and then I'd start running again, and lose 20 pounds, and so it was just kind of this wave. And over the last 10 years, I've gotten down quite a ways.
Yeah. So you're literally like half the man that you married.
At my lowest, the most total weight that I have lost, and it fluctuates still, right? Like right now it's winter time, and it's a little easier to put on the pounds.
Right. And, the holiday.
But so my max like low weight loss was like 120 pounds. So,
wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's impressive. At the same time, like you feel a little bit more comfortable, slightly up from that, though, huh?
Yeah,
like your body hovers around.
Yeah, my body hovers around that because I train pretty consistently, like you'd said. Yeah. I mean, and so my training doesn't really drop off. Just my eating habits are better or worse. At times, and it's hard, when you're training a lot, you want to eat a lot and not necessarily good things all the time too.
Well, and for the most part, your body can kind of handle that. Yeah, so it's not necessarily bad.
Yeah, and just in the summertime, it's warmer, and I think you sweat more, and I think you just are burning through things faster anyways too.
Right. Well, and we tend to be more active outside of just our runs too in the summer.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
That we're doing other activities where we're kind of more homebound.
Cooped up in the house playing Nintendo Switch or something, right?
Right. Yeah, but you can totally go on a run in the morning and then go do stuff with your kids or whatever later. So yeah, definitely the Switch probably doesn't burn as many calories.
It doesn't.
Getting outside.
It doesn't. I mean, Mario Kart's pretty competitive, but doesn't get the heart rate up.
Right. Not quite the same. I actually did a science fair project on that in like junior high or something, and it does get your heart rate up quite a bit. But I want to repeat that with my kids with the metabolic cart. Yeah. And see like how much it actually like. Are you really burning more calories on the Wii or whatever?
Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of interesting. Speaking of which, we just did a metabolic test with Preston, and he crushed it. He did really awesome. So fascinating to see how each runner adapts differently to running. Mm-hmm. Somebody that can complete lots and lots of 150-mile races, and yet how your profile is set up to be different at burning calories than others is really fascinating.
Yeah,
So.
it was interesting to me too. I had no idea what was going to happen, what it was going to look like.
Yeah.
Some things were probably really good, and some things were surprisingly, just different than you would expect.
Right. Yeah. I would have expected more, ability to burn fat than what you do, but you're very good at handling burning carbohydrate and handling lactate. Whereas a lot of people, once they start accumulating lactate, they're done, right? Yeah. And so you're very good at being able to, we call that lactate shuttling or whatever, but very good at being able to handle that. And that's fascinating that your training has set you up for that and you've been able to continue to improve.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. As I look back, like the burning that's associated with lactate buildup, right? Like that doesn't happen a lot to me.
Yeah, you don't feel that in your muscle and stuff like that, like some people do. So genetics definitely play a component into that. Like it is fascinating to see how each runner is different. And so listening to your body is something we preach quite a bit. Like if you feel tired, if you feel whatever, listen to your body and really experiment. In that process of training for this, how has that changed since you got into these longer distances, and how do you listen to your body?
I've got a really good story, apples to apples, actually.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I had run the Western States 100. I had gotten in on one ticket on a fluke. If anybody out there knows what it takes to get into that, it's like a miracle that I got into it. So I got into Western States, ran really well there, and that race is in June. And then I was signed up for the Bear 100, which is the last weekend of September. And so I was expecting that I was going to roll into this Bear 100 and just crush it, right? Because I had figured this 100-mile thing out. Like, I just had a really good race.
Yeah.
And so I go in and I had these high expectations and this time that I wanted to run. I wanted to run under 24 hours. Like,
it's always dangerous when you have that time in your head.
I can do this super easy, right? Like, I got this. And so I started rolling along, and I got hit with the cramp bug pretty early, and things just weren't going well. Probably about 30 miles in, and I just was so fixated on that goal and not listening to what my body was saying and not thinking. Yeah. And so I just powered through, right? Kind of the athlete mentality sometimes. Like, I'm gonna overpower this 100 miles, which is really stupid. But so I just kind of pushed through. I was able to kind of get it back for another 30 or 40 miles, and then eventually just my legs were wrecked. I couldn't move. I was, just devastated mentally, emotionally from that push, and I DNF'd. I didn't finish at mile 76 at the Bear 100 at Beaver Mountain Lodge, for anybody who's familiar, at the ski resort there. And it was because I didn't listen to my body. The next year at the Bear, I had a great day. Everything went perfect. But so this year at Bear, I had kind of a weird summer with some health issues.
Yeah.
And around the same spot of the race, I started having some similar issues. I started to cramp. I was feeling hot. I was already thinking, man, do I want to quit? It was actually like the exact same spot, like where this all happened.
On
the course. And so I started having flashbacks and so this time though, instead of worrying about running a fast time, like running as fast as I had the year before, I was like, you know what? I just got to settle in. I've got to listen to what's going on here. And I've got to just slow down. I got to get rehydrated. I've got to get more calories in, and I've got to just chill out.
Yeah.
And I did, right? And I didn't move very fast for me for 15 or 20 miles.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the sun starts going down and I start to feel like really good again. And I'm like, okay.
I got that.
Yeah, and I was just real positive self-talk. I was around a few really positive people on the race course. And there's this climb at about mile 48 that's really long and hard. It's before you drop into Tony Grove, which is mile 52. And I felt really good on that downhill. And I was looking at the time a little bit at this point. I was like, maybe I still have a chance to run under 24 hours, but I'm going to have to run as fast as I did last year, where I ran significantly faster, right? So I was like, but I could do it. It could happen. And so anyways, is that angels in the outfield? It could happen. I think they always say that. But so I get into the mile 52, I pick up a pacer, and I just started rolling. And things just started clicking off because I had taken the time to listen to my body. The temperature dropped. Things started feeling good. I negative split the race, I think. I ran the back half faster or even to the way I ran the first half.
That's
I came in under 24 hours. Everything was great. And it was because instead of being silly and pushing through that threshold when it didn't matter, I listened to my body. So that's an apples to apples comparison.
Right.
There's fitness levels are different, experience is different, but if you listen to your body, things generally work out better.
So much better. That's such a great example of like just a very stark contrast. Mm-hmm. But I think that happens in our training too, just on our day-to-day training. When we don't listen to our body, like we wind up blowing things up way more than we need to. Whereas if we just took it easy today and kind of long played it, like I live to play another day type mentality. Like, today's not going great, but if I take it easy today instead of pushing through, tomorrow will be a better run instead of having successive days of bad runs because you pushed again.
I was out with a couple friends just a couple weeks ago, and one of my friends just was not having a good day. He was feeling pretty sick, and he just kind of was like grinding through it. And I was like, this run today isn't going to matter at your 100 miler in May. Like, it's not going to make or break it. And we were just kind of giving him a hard time, but that's the truth, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
There's no reason to just...
No one run is that important.
Yeah, and you don't need to run hard every day, and you need to give your body time to recover. So,
well, and if that one run winds up blowing up the rest of your runs,
sure, it could ruin a couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
Which would be significant.
Yeah.
Where just taking a day and maybe just walking a little or whatever would be.
That's a hard message for sure to dial that in for yourself and whatnot, but super important. So I would say one of the big keys for you has been consistency in training.
For sure. That's what I preach.
Yeah. Speak to that a little bit. So preach for a second.
So, I see people ask questions all the time in social media platforms like, is the Vaporfly like going to, make my 5K time way faster, my marathon time way faster? And the answer probably is yes, right? Yeah. Like it is. But what's really going to help your marathon time is running every day, right? And not every. I mean, I run 6 days a week, and that's not for everybody. But being consistent in training is the key. I just the workmanlike mentality of it, and I really love it. So maybe I'm not the best to speak on it. Like I love exercising.
Sure.
It's one of my the best part of my day. A lot of times, it helps me calm down, forget about work, forget about a lot of things that stress me out.
Sure.
But getting out every day has been the biggest change for me. And with a little structure, I have a coach that helps me with my intensity levels. But the biggest gains for me have come when, for an ultra marathoner, instead of running 50 miles a week during, average training weeks, to get that up to 70, and then in my peak weeks, getting it up to 80 or 90 miles a week, which is a lot, and it's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And not everybody has the time or the desire to do it. But, right now, if you're at 20 miles a week, what can you do to get it up to 40 or 50 miles a week?
Right.
Or hours, right? If you're training for 3 hours a week, what can you do to get it up to 5 or 6 hours a week? I just think that volume and endurance sports where you're trying to go for a long time is the key.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah.
The more you can build that resilience in your body and all those things, and it's just kind of hacking your life. Finding out how to be consistent in your life, because everybody has different schedules or things with their kids or whatever, but there's a way to fit it in.
Yeah, and a good rule that a lot of runners, I hear them talk about, especially ultra runners, because you get really tired, is the 20-minute rule. Give yourself 20 minutes on the run. If you think you don't want to run, that's fine, but give yourself 20 minutes and see how you feel after 20 minutes.
I love it.
Yeah, and then just from there, because you're probably 20 minutes away from your car or your house, so at least you got to run 40 minutes. But give yourself permission to stop if you need to.
Right.
But at least try to start.
So, I totally agree that consistency really is the key. That's something we preach as well. Like, that no one run, no one day is going to make as big a difference as just getting in there and doing something every day. And so whether it's the 20-minute rule, which I really like, I haven't heard that before, but I really like that concept of just go try.
Yeah.
And you may feel like, my body doesn't have it
Which
today.
has happened to me multiple times, right? It happens 2 or 3 times a summer where I call my wife and I'm like, hey, can you come get me? Because this is just not happening.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times it turns into a great run.
Right.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. That's been my experience too, where I'll give myself the excuse of you know what, just dog it today. It's fine. Just go out there and just walk with your dog or whatever. And then you hit a stretch that you normally run, and you're like, I'll try jogging this. And then next thing you know, you're running, and you're like, actually, I feel pretty good today. And so it's more about just getting out and doing it, and the consistency is where we make progress. We don't make progress. No one run really is that important.
No, it's not.
You can't make enough progress in any one day for it to really matter. But when you string together a bunch of good days, that's where you make progress.
And then it just gets easier and easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you enjoy it more and
Yeah,
more.
for sure.
And I think that's one of the things too, that consistency, being consistent with it, but giving yourself the out to take it easy and to not have to push every day.
Yeah.
You start to enjoy it more, because when it's not drudgery, when you're not running to lose weight, or when you're not running to, like PR or whatever, when you're running just to enjoy it, then you can like back off enough that you can PR and you can like...
Well, and that's what's great about ultra running, right, is because there's so many variables, a lot of it is just getting out and just moving and seeing what happens. Because you're never running that fast, right? Like you don't have to be fast to be a good ultra runner.
Right.
You just have to be able to do it all day. Whoever slows down least is what one of my friends always says.
It's true. And mental toughness, I think, is the biggest thing. And the consistency, to me, is where you build the mental toughness.
For sure.
Like being able to get out when the weather's bad, when the this and
Another
that.
good story. Sorry, I like to tell stories.
No, that's why you're here.
So just last Saturday, I was out with some friends on Antelope Island, and so today is February 19th, so the 12th, I guess it would have been. Or the 13th. It was the 13th. We were out on Antelope Island, and it was horrible weather last Saturday. Awful. And we kind of went out there because weather this year has been pretty spotty. When it says it's going to snow or rain, and just like, oh yeah, it'll rain for 30 minutes and then it's done. But we got drenched all day, and we did like the first 19 miles of the 50-mile course, and then we were going to do another loop to add some miles on. And I was with two buddies, and all of us, after we got back to the car, we were ready to quit, right? Yeah. But none of us would quit because we were all like, it was a pride issue, right?
Sure.
And one of my buddies had driven all the way up from Alpine.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're like, and then all it took was one of my buddies said, okay, 4 more miles, right? And that's and none of us wanted to do it. And as soon as we got away from the car, everything was fine. We all felt way better, right? Yeah. It's such a mental thing.
Right. It's the horse back to the barn type thing,
exactly.
Right?
And you're ready to quit. It's freezing, it's raining, snowing, whatever it was.
Sleeting.
Yeah. It was.
I remember that day, actually.
It was pretty bad. Yeah. And it wasn't the most fun weather, but it was fun to be with friends and just that positive, like, hey, we can do 4 more miles, right? Like, let's just go jog.
Yeah. Oh, so I called my dad. He was on Grandview Peak that same day, or heading up to Grandview Peak. I was like, "You're crazy! Like, it's so cold and slushy." He's like, "Yeah, it's not great. We're pretty soaked."
Yeah, we were pretty soaked. Yeah. But yeah, I think just pushing through that barrier, whether it's just getting out the door or doing what you had set out to do. I have another friend that she will do whatever she sets out to do that day, even if it's slow and she has to slow down, and that's not always great. But on long runs and ultra training, like, you have to, right? Yeah. It's so easy to say, 20 miles is just as good as 25, or 15 is just as good as 20. Yeah. And, it's just the mental thing. Physically, it probably isn't that big of a difference.
Right.
But mentally, to set out and do what you can do.
Yeah. So one last question then. So for people that feel broken, so you mentioned you had some medical issues this last year, and then, with your journey of starting out at 300 pounds, people that feel broken or that there's barriers to why they can't train, what would you say to that?
So my medical issue, it'll make it clear. I was anemic, so my blood counts were down. I had no energy. I couldn't get oxygen to my blood, right? Yeah. Things were just bad. Some different GI issues that caused it. And so once we figured out what the problem was, it was easy. But in that time, when I didn't know what was going on, I just kind of tried to keep doing it, and just because it's been such a big part of my life. Yeah. But I think so often it's easy to just say, and like this last year would have been really easy because of the COVID stuff, right? Yeah. Like, there's not going to be any races. I'm just going to stop. I'm just, I'm going to figure this out, which I would have. But running didn't hurt anything. Running, when my physician figured out what was going on, he's like, well, running probably is actually helping. Yeah. And so I think so often we pump the brakes because we're looking for a reason to not, or because sometimes you get tired of it. Yeah. But if you can figure out a way to continue on, whether it's a little niggle or it's an issue where you're just not feeling good, to just keep doing something, I think, is a key until things turn around.
Yeah.
Because had I not kept doing something, I wouldn't have had that great experience at the Bear 100 last year, where I had just a wonderful day and like a wonderful like back half of like, hey, I came back from the dead, things went perfect the second half, and you know, I wouldn't have had that had I not stuck with it and been determined.
Yeah.
So I think you can battle through quite a few things. Not that that's that serious of a health issue, but I didn't feel good.
Right.
You know, it would have been easy to just mail it in and phone it in, but I didn't.
Yeah. And I love that. That's become kind of a theme of this podcast, is everybody kind of has this story of a time when they could have given up and bailed on it. And it's fun to hear those stories of how people persevere and can find that consistency despite roadblocks. Because everyone will have roadblocks.
And it's different for everybody, right?
Yeah. So anyway, awesome. Thank you so much. You've got to get out of here, so we better let you go. But it's been awesome having Preston on and hearing more about his journey. Awesome runner and always continuing to improve. It was fun to do a metabolic test with him and see how he's training and how that's affects his metabolism.
Hopefully we can improve it a little bit.
Yeah. There's always ways to improve, right? So we'll talk some more strategies there for sure. But thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, and make sure you like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff so you can join us on the next one. Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Run Amazing Utah. Remember, if they can do it, you can do it too. If you have an inspirational running story or know someone who does, we would love to feature you too. Contact us through our Instagram or Facebook, Run Amazing Utah.